Good morning, third period. It's good to see you guys again. Welcome back to my classroom. Just so you guys know, we are going over understanding an argument today. So I hope you guys read your reading for last night to help you get along through the lesson. So if you guys can go ahead and open your Google Classroom page, I'll go ahead and stream that for you. So if you go ahead and go to your Google Classroom page, I'm pretty sure you guys can see my screen. You can go right here onto the posted material note sheet for today's lesson. That is a little sheet that has a bunch of words, has our terms for today, as well as some little hints, and as well as text box for you guys to type in. You guys don't have to use this. This is not a required piece. It's just to help you along if you want to use this to take your notes. Also, we will be using the drills worksheet later on today in class, and I will go over it. But for right now, all you're going to need is your note sheet. So I'm going to go ahead and stop my share, and I'm going to go ahead and share our PowerPoint for today. Okay, let me put this on the play mode. Okay. Can you guys see my screen for the PowerPoint today?
Yep.
Awesome. All right. So can you go ahead and one of you define what an argument is in your own definition? It doesn't have to be dictionary or anything like that. What do you think an argument is?
It's like what your opinion is, or like what you think is correct out of like multiple choices for a situation.
Yeah, yeah, that's a very good definition. Um, I also want to mention that when we're going through this form of a argument, it's going to be a way deeper dive. So you're right on the right track, Evan. I just want to let you know that there is a lot more to it than what you initially thought. So this is the whole point of this class, and to help you guys structure your arguments as we go through the lesson and through your papers coming up. So these are going to be your I can statements for the week, possibly into next week. It completely depends on how you guys are doing with this lesson. I don't want to push it too far. So for today and for the week, so your first I can statement is I can properly cite sources used to support my argument. Your second one is I can find reputable sources to support my argument. I can use the rhetorical vices, ethos, pathos, logos to support my argument. And then you can understand the terms from today. It's a very long list of terms. Not too long, but I don't really want to read them because I'd rather dive into the examples and help explain that to you guys. All right, so at the beginning of your argument, first off, we have a claim. A claim is a statement of opinion that is supported by evidence that the author is trying to prove true. So the claim is the basis of your argument. What are you claiming is true or false, or what you think is better or worse? It's completely up to you. Without a claim, you don't even have an argument. So it's just, what do you think is correct or false or anything. It's the basis of any argument. The second point is the reason or purpose, a cause, justification, or explanation for how the evidence supports the claim. So when you have a claim, you usually have a reason for that claim or a backing for that claim. So, for example, if I think cats are the best, my background to is, I'm a cat owner. I have 3 cats. They're my favorite. They're easy to take care of. Or another thing could be that my claim could be that left-handed people don't have a lot of supplies compared to right-handed people, and that's unfair. My reasoning could be, well, that's left-handed, and when I try to find a pair of scissors, I can't just go to Target and find a pair. So you start off with the claim, and then in order to back up that claim, you have a reason. So with the claim and the reason, those two things together start to form your argument, the statement that supports the claim. So you're claiming something is the best, and now you're arguing why it's the best. You're saying what truly makes this better, or it's a support in a sense. It's kind of hard to explain yet because we're still diving in. We're still getting the beginning of it. But the claim and the reason go into the argument as a whole, but that argument has to make sure it supports the claim. So you can't claim that chocolate's the best candy and then say, well, I like sweet tarts, they're better than chocolate, kind of a thing. Like, they have to connect. And then after that, in order to tie everything together to support your argument, you're going to need some evidence. The evidence is something that gives a sign or proof of the existence of or truth. I said that horrible. I'm going to say it one more time. Something that gives a sign or proof of the existence or truth. So evidence can literally be anything. It completely depends on what you're arguing about. So if I'm arguing um, that the fish populations are really low in Lake Erie. So I could go ahead and find news articles that are talking about it. I can find scientific documents, go through databases. But if I'm doing something based on social media, Twitter can be my evidence. That could be my source, or Snapchat or Instagram, or even something more physical like a photo document saying, well, if you look at this photo document, you can see that this painting shows the color blue, which is from this time period, all kinds of things. There's so many things that count as evidence. And a thing that goes really well with evidence is having credible evidence. So credible is information from a trustworthy source. Now, finding credible information can actually be very difficult because there's a lot of people using fake news, or there's people posting blog posts. And even though those posts might have actual factual information, the blog post itself could be written by anyone. That's why we usually say that Wikipedia is not a trustworthy source, because anyone can go onto their website and actually change the information. So later on in this PowerPoint, I will go over some important things when you're looking for credible sources, but credibility is a huge factor in your argument. If you do not have credible information, your whole argument can completely fall apart. So just to go over everything once more time, you start off with a claim. That claim has a reason. Those two things start to form your argument, and that argument has to be coherent and similar to the claim, or else it's not a valid argument, or you're arguing two different things. In order to support the claim, the reason, and the argument as a whole, you need to have evidence, and that evidence needs to be credible to hold it all up. Okay, moving right along, we're going to go ahead to our first question. So, what comes first in the argument process? Is it a claim, a reason, argument, or evidence? Yes, Evan.
A claim.
Okay, let's see if you're right. Awesome. Good job, Evan. So, yes, so a claim does come first in the argument. Like I said beforehand, in order to even have an argument, you have to claim something is happening, something is true, false, better, or worse, whatever you would like to say. All right. So now that we have our basis of the argument, now it's time to go in more of the process of the argument. So in an argument, it's important to also include a counterclaim. So a counterclaim is an acknowledgement towards the opposite side of your argument. So even though your argument is based off your viewpoint, to make your argument stronger, it's important to mention the opposing side. Because no matter what, in an argument, there's always one side over the other. So it's important to acknowledge them and their ideas in order to strengthen your own argument. When we don't include a counterclaim, we can be perceived as left-leaning or right-leaning, which is usually more of a political thing. So like more towards republicanism, or you're more of a Democrat, but it does take a huge effect in your credibility. So that's part of a counterclaim. So back to my example, if I'm saying cats are the best pet, a counterclaim could be like, well, dogs are more energetic. They're more friendly with people. Cats like to claw people's face, kind of a thing. So that could be my counterclaim. However, with a counterclaim, even though that could be something negative that hurts your argument, you use a rebuttal to go against the counterclaim. So a rebuttal is an explanation of why the counterclaim does not stand true. So a counterclaim could, like I'm saying, like, oh, dogs are more friendly. And I'm like, well, maybe you had a bad experience with a cat, or that basically they're stereotyping cats because there's some cats that are super friendly and that kind of a thing. So there's many different ways. A better way of doing a counterclaim is saying like how people say a tomato is a vegetable can be the counterclaim. And you're like, well, a tomato has seeds, or it has this, so it's considered a fruit. You're basically disproving the counterclaim, which is strengthening your argument with the rebuttal and kind of putting your opponent, per se, more down. Another important thing when it comes to the argument is making sure it's relevant. How closely a piece of information is connected to the ideas being discussed. So back to the evidence thing, how we're saying that evidence is credible. A source can be credible, but it might not be relevant to your argument. So one thing could be that I'm talking about cats, but then like house cats, but then I start talking about tigers and lions. Okay, that's not really relevant in that terminology because I want to talk more about domesticated house animals. Another thing with relevant would be time. So if I'm looking for something currently saying that cats are the best, and I use an article from 1970, well, that article's from a long time ago. It's not going to hold as true today if I use something from 2 years ago, 5 years ago. Usually, when we're looking for sources that are time sensitive, we do tend to look probably for like 10 years per se, unless you're making an argument about something historical. So, if I'm making an argument about the Holocaust, okay, even though Anne Frank's diary is older, it was relevant during that time period. You know, even today, if I'm talking about Holocaust in the classroom, I could still use Anne Frank's diary in my argument saying the importance and everything like that. So I'm going to take a quick minute. Does anybody have any questions? Do I need to go over something again? Yes, Evan.
But the counterclaim, does it always need to have a rebuttal?
It does not. Sometimes if the counterclaim does prove true, you don't need a rebuttal. It is just very common within a paper to write a rebuttal. That's a very good question. Any others? Anyone? All right. Okay, I'm gonna move straight on towards the more like the end of your intro paper as well as the conclusion paragraph of your essay. We do include a thesis statement. So the thesis statement is going to be probably the strongest sentence within your paper. So the thesis statement sets the tone for an argument which uses evidence to make a claim about a specific topic. So basically, this is when we're kind of combining the claim with the argument to make one cohesive sentence. This whole sentence, when I read it in your paper, it's going to tell me everything that your paper's about. So, so if I say cats are the best house animal because dogs aren't capable of providing the same love. Okay, you know when you read my paper, you're going to learn about cats, you're going to learn about dogs, and you're going to learn about which animal is more loving to the owner. So the thesis statement is super, super important. And if your thesis statement is not strong, it can also ruin your argument. So that is another important point. So counterclaim goes against your argument. Rebuttal is to go against the counterclaim, going against your argument. And then we also want our evidence and our sources to be relevant in order to make sense with the times that we're in. And then the thesis statement ties our whole argument together in one cohesive sentence. It can be more than one sentence. I disclaimer. A thesis statement can be more than one sentence, but it tends to be one sentence. It just has to be a decent amount of words. I would say probably the max would be 3. I've never seen a thesis statement more than 3 sentences, not including semicolons, but I think it's more understandable if I say like one sentence, so then it stresses the importance of a thesis statement. Okay, so if I'm arguing about why schools today shouldn't ban Holocaust books from the classroom, is it relevant to talk about classrooms in 1986? Yes, Evan.
False.
All right, let's see. Yes, good job. So, 1986 is a very decent chunk of time. Not that it's an older time, but if we're talking about classrooms today, we want more information today because back then, I mean, we have all this smartboard technology, we have Zoom right here. So, yes, it is false. So, how does this all connect? So, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the board. If you guys want to go ahead and look, I'm going to stop streaming. If you guys want to look at my other camera, which is currently off camera, if I can't see it. Oh, there it is. Okay. So, with our terms from today. So, first off, in the center, we're going to make a web real quick just because it shows how everything is kind of connected. So, first in the center of our web, we have our claim. The whole thing that holds our argument together. Stemming off from the claim would be our reason. or purpose. Sometimes your teachers will call it a purpose, but in our case we're calling it a reason, so I'm just going to put both so you can see that right there. With our reason and purpose, actually we're going to do this way. So coming off of our claim as well, we're going to need some evidence. And then with our evidence, it stems off as well. It's interconnected with credible. So both these things are connected. With our evidence, we'll go over this a little bit later on, but we can use rhetorical devices, which I will add on later to the web. I just don't want to add it on just quite yet, as well as connecting to our claim and our reason. Claim and reason can almost go in the same bubble as well, because they really, I wouldn't say the same bubble, but you know, if you did like the Venn diagram kind of a thing, they would be kind of in the center together because they share a lot of the same properties and intent. Some of our other terms from today, we had counterclaim. So counterclaim can stem from here. Claim. And then also after counterclaim, we're going to have our rebuttal. Because you can't rebuttal something if no one else is going against your point. So we can't have a rebuttal with our claim because our rebuttal is stemming off of our counterclaim. So after that, I'm trying to think of our other terms from today. We have argument to the left, relevant. Because our claim doesn't have to be relevant. I would say that could also stem off of evidence. So relevant. And then our thesis statement should connect to everything. So really our thesis statement can go up here. Our thesis statement connects to everything. It's drawing everything together in one point. Great, we're running out of time. 40 minutes. Okay, that's fine. Sorry, it's our Zoom classroom. So, and then all of this truly connects to our argument. So the whole thing is our argument, and then argument also, the other type of argument, meaning the point that we're making, which is what we're arguing, can also stem from claim. All right, does that make sense? Does anybody have any questions about our little web diagram? Nope. Awesome. Oh, yes. Oh, you're good. See, that's a thumbs up. Okay. So it does say our meeting is going to end in 10 minutes. So I'm going to keep talking as long as I can, and then I will hop on and get you guys back on. But for right now, we're going to continue the lesson. Remove pin. Let's go back to sharing my screen. All right. So let's go. How does it all connect? Okay. So this is a really interesting quote that I would like to include from, let me just minus that out. His name is Sterling W Sill. He is a famous writer. His quote is, "Fighting is not the best way to win an argument. If carried to its ultimate conclusions, the old idea of an eye for an eye eventually ends in making everybody blind." And I think this is a very important point to take into consideration, because even though you're arguing, you're not fighting with in our case, the opponent. The whole point of an argument is to bring light to a situation or to call for change, something along those lines. We're not trying to put down our opponent. We're not supposed to say, like, you're blatantly wrong to their face. We just want to bring awareness to our points and our values and our morals in a very mature, calm manner. Because, I mean, there is a time to fight. It's just this is more of a written document, so it's more passive than aggressive. So just keep that in mind while you're writing your argument paper coming up, that it's not a fist fight. You're not trying to put the opponent down. You're just trying to support your claim and make your reader known to how you feel about your source with facts and evidence and such. Okay, so now we're going to move on to rhetoric. So the language of a work and its style, words used to convince or sway an audience. This is rhetoric. Rhetoric is a huge tool used in a lot of argument style writing. So, under rhetoric, there's a lot of different terms, but for right now, I don't want to overwhelm you guys with those terms, and so we're going to focus primarily on ethos, pathos, and logos. So, with ethos, ethos is the ethical appeal based on the character's credibility or the reliability of the writer. So, ethos, this rhetorical device is primarily targeting the writer of the document. So if I am doing a paper and I'm using a research study for the basis of it, even though the research study is the meat of the paper, I'm not attacking, that's a wrong word. I'm targeting or analyzing the author of the document. So if you're reading a research paper and the author is a college student, okay, they're not going to be as credible as a 10-year science tech at MMU. Okay, so they're going to be way more credible than that college student. And with that credibility, knowing where they come from is knowledge, and that knowledge is the credibility of their argument. They know what they're talking about, their experience, they have background information and intel about the subject. So that is what ethos is. It is based on who the author is. So even though anybody can write an article, who they are and their occupation plays a huge role into how credible their argument stands. After that is pathos, which is the emotional appeal that appeals to an audience's needs, values, and emotional sensibilities. So pathos, like it said, is an appeal to emotion. So if I'm making an argument about cancer, okay, how we need to have more research study for it, my appeal to emotion would be like, well, my grandfather passed away of cancer, he had it in his bones, if there was more research, we could have caught it on time, if they're doing more studies, maybe we could cure more people. Because I'm talking about my personal experience with my grandfather, that can touch somebody else's heart, and that can sway them towards my argument, like, wow, I can't believe, like, she lost her grandfather, this is completely unfair. That's more pathos. It's all about the emotion. The other one is logos, the appeal based on logic and reason or the facts. So literally, logos think logic, and the logic is literally, like it says, the facts. If I go into a news article and it says the weather for the day, that's the fact. If I go to a population count, that's a fact. The weather, that's a fact. How much water is in the body, that's a fact. So a quick way to remember this, so ethos thinks ethical, like EE. Pathos, I usually think like pathetic or like empath, so the PP, and then logos is logic. So, all of these devices can go under the evidence. All of this stuff, the emotion is evidence, the facts, that's straight evidence, and then a person's credibility is evidence. Does that make sense to you guys? Awesome. All right, moving right along, because I don't want to go too fast. If anybody needs anything or have a question, please let me know. Okay, so now we're going to go into a deeper dive of researching your topics. So depending on what you're going to choose for your argument paper or any paper in general, it is important to know how to research. So these are some quick things, and then I'm going to go over the little saying at the bottom. So knowing you guys, you're probably not going to do a lot of your research through books. You're going to probably use Google. You're going to use different search engines. I know this because I was you one time and I mainly use Google. So when you're using Google, just try to look for the more trustworthy, the dots at the bottom. So .org, .organization, .gov is .government, .edu is .education, .com you can literally get anything through. So it isn't as trustworthy because you can get a .com and it can be a blog post. You go .com and it can just be like a Facebook page per se. But the .org is like an organization. They research it. This is their whole topic. This is their field subject. Government is released by the government. That can be used anything political, or usually there's some medical websites that are .gov. EDU is usually anything education based, so there are a lot of colleges that post research articles based on their professors that written them or things like that they publish because it's very good information. So those are very trustworthy. Also, be aware that with Google, like I said on the next point, that the engines won't always give you the best sources. So the sources at the top of your Google page, those are the ones that have been viewed the most and they have the highest paying promotional standards. So websites can pay Google to prompt their website forward. So then more people check it out. The more people check it out, the higher it gets on the Google page. So even though there's like you check usually the first page and then you can't find it, those other 10, 20, 30 pages of Google Docs of like the Google search engines, they can still have valuable information. It's just they're not as heavily promoted. So even though you can Google your sources for your assignment, I would also recommend using Google Scholar. If you just type in Google Scholar into Google, it will send you there. Google Scholar narrows down more research articles and online books and such like that. It eliminates a lot of the .coms, a lot of the untrustworthy websites, and gives you more academic articles. Another thing that you can use is our school databases. Yes, I know none of you really like to use them, but they do have a lot of valuable information, or even the online libraries. Our library does have an online program with other school districts in the area, and they have a lot of online books that you can just transfer and then to your account basically. So you can look at the sources that way, or you can actually go to the library and use a book. But our school databases have all kinds of trustworthy websites, articles that are easy to use. Because I am not streaming at the school right now, I do not have access to show you guys. But when we return to class on Monday, due to the snow day, I will go ahead and show you guys that. So when we're citing our sources, let me go into presenting mode. Didn't even realize I fell out of that. Scroll through this. Okay, so when we are using those sources, it's important to cite them. So there are two ways that you can cite a source. We have MLA and APA. So MLA stands for the Modern Language Association, and APA stands for the American Psychological Association. So we never call them really by their full names. It's usually just MLA or APA. We do have other citation platforms like Chicago, but Chicago is very rarely used. It's mainly MLA and APA, and I don't want to waste your guys' time with teaching you something that you're not really going to use. So you will, when you get to college and maybe in your higher level high school classes, you will be using APA. But for right now, we're going to focus primarily on MLA. So MLA is a citation style for sources within the liberal arts and humanities. You're probably like, Miss Thomas, what the heck is that? So that basically just stands for anything in the arts field. So language arts, history, regular arts like photo, music, painting, ceramics, communications, like that's a class that you take in college. Those are all considered under MLA. So based on that, you could probably assume that APA is the citations for the sciences. And when I mean the sciences, I mean all of them, like psychology, sociology. This also counts for anything medical, math, or education-wise. But because, this is a third period, ninth grade English class, we're going to focus mainly on MLA. So I want to show you guys a little source to help you figure out some of the features to it, like how to cite a source. So we're going to go ahead and follow this website if it'll let me share my screen. Hold on. Love technical difficulties. Okay, can you guys still see my screen? Give me like a thumbs up or something. You can either call out. Awesome. Okay. So here is a regular, ordinary website that I found earlier today. This is AARP. This is a very popular company. Also, if you look in the URL, it does have a .org, which means it is more trustworthy. Yes, Evan.
Are you supposed to be sharing the website?
Can you not see it?
I can see the slides though.
Oh, okay. Hold on. Thank you for letting me know. Let me just stop my share, or I can switch it over to the website. All right. Can you see the website now?
Yep.
Okay. So what I was saying earlier, I was pointing out the little URL up here, how it says .org. That means it's more trustworthy, and the AARP is a more trustworthy company. It has been around a very long time. So I went ahead and looked up state-by-state guide to face mask requirements. For your sources, when you're citing them, one of the most important things, you need to look for an author's name. The author name will either be at the top of the article or it might be somewhere buried in the bottom. For us, ours is right at the top. Also, another important thing to include is the date. The date helps with the credibility, and the relevance, like how we were talking about earlier, how we need to have relevant sources. It shows us how common, or not common, how modern the idea is, or the argument, or the claim, or just the article itself. So this one was from 2022, and that was about 4 days ago, 4 to 3 days ago, depending on just whenever, because my computer clock or date is probably wrong. So we're just gonna say, because I can't remember the date. So this is very, very relevant. Very, very relevant. It is in the month that we're currently in. So this can be huge for an argument that we're currently making because this is current, recent evidence. So also another thing that you need to know is the title of the article. Ours is State by State Guide to Face Mask Requirements. You need to know the title of the website that you're getting it off of. If you're using a website, if you're using a book, it's a completely different style, but I wanted to show you guys what it looks like for a website. Yes, Evan.
I was just wondering about the credibility. Is so a source that could be too new?
Um, I would say that completely depends on the argument you're making, that a source could be too new. And it also depends on where the source came from. So one thing that's happening kind of today, so we have like our primary sources and our secondary sources. So a primary source would be anything from that historical period, or right now, like with the Ukraine war, we're getting that information currently, and some of the times that information can be flawed. So it's always good to wait a couple days, or say if an information is like that new, like it just came out. But sometimes, depending on your argument can be completely about how new that thing is, um, or how that new idea can go against the old ideas. It honestly completely depends on what kind of argument you're making. So that's a little hard for me to answer just because, once again, I don't know what kind of argument you're making, but I'm going to say it really isn't. It just depends on how you're going to spin your argument. I'm sorry that doesn't really help too much, but does it help just a little bit? Okay. So, back to citing sources. So we need the name of the website, we need the title of the document, the author, and the date that it was published. Another thing is, if you scroll down to your website, even though this one's very, very long, usually in here, this little section right here, you might find the publisher of the website or the article. You might also find the year it was published down here, and sometimes you can find the author as well. So you do want to keep that in mind. And then the last thing, when you're using an internet source, you're going to want the URL from where the source came from. That just so then I can look at that as an educator or a reader, and I go, okay, so this is where they found this source. I can look at this and use it for my arguments, or I can check their information, or based on the URLs you use, I can be like, okay, so they got this off a .org website. This website is fairly trustworthy, that kind of a mentality. So we're going to go ahead and go back to our lovely PowerPoint. Okay, so let's go ahead. I'm moving everything around. Okay, love starting from the beginning of the slide. Okay, so this is what a usual citation will look like. This is more or less the layout. This is without the information. This is a stereotypical citation. This is usually for web documents. So the last name of the author will always go first in MLA. Then it will be the first name, the full first name. Both of the names will be capitalized. So the first letter of the last name, first letter of the first name, and then you put a period. Inside your quotation marks will be the title of your article. So you know how ours was state by state of face masking or something like that? That would go in the quotation marks. The title of the website is usually always italicized, so that's going to be our AARP. Based on where the publisher is, it would go right after the AARP in just regular text and then have a comma afterwards. But because the AARP didn't really list a publisher per se, we would just leave it blank if we don't have that type of information. Sometimes an article will say that the website itself published the article because it's not necessarily an individual's work, it's like a company's work. So you would put the company name for where the last name is and the first name, as well as the website title, if that's how it works. And then also, you don't really put the date like the way we usually do, because we usually do the month, the day, and then the year. In this format, you do the day, you do the abbreviation of the month, so like March would be MAR period, and then the year, which would be 2022. After that comma, you're gonna go ahead and put the URL in there, the whole thing. But also another important factor to remember is if you look at mine, my second line does not line up with my first line. The second line is supposed to be indented and any line after that. So if it was a third line, it would be in the same indent location. If your URL does not fit, like my URL is huge and won't fit here, you would just basically press enter and tab it over because we don't want it the same length as the first line. Also, excuse me, with your citations, it will go on a citation paper. It would be called a works cited page. In APA, it is considered a reference page, but here it is a works cited page. Your works cited page should be in alphabetical order based off the author's last name. So if someone's last name is Albert, they're going to be at the top of the list. If their last name is Wren with a W, they're going to be at the bottom of the list. There is no limit to how many sources you can use, but I would say you should definitely use more than one. At least for your argument paper, I'm going to require 3 sources, but if you want to have more than 3, that's totally fine. You just need to use as many as you can to support your argument while still keeping your voice present. Because even though all those facts and information is important, I can go ahead and just read those articles and figure out what they're talking about. I want to hear your points and your views, so use the quotes to support your writing and not your writing to support the quotes. So after this formatting, this is what the citation for that website that we just saw would look like. So we have his last name, his first name after the comma, the title of the article in the quotation marks, AERP is in italicized, then we have the 10th, then the March with the period, 2022, and you see how I did the URL. I typed it as far as I could in the line, and then I moved it over underneath. So everything has to be on that tabbed line. Does that make sense for you guys? Okay, awesome. So we're not going to go to the drill sheet just yet. I wanted to go back up to the board. Let me stop sharing my screen, and I wanted to go over where those terms would go on our board, and then as well as we're going to go ahead and just talk through what an argument would kind of look like based off our viewpoints. So if we go back up to the board, under evidence would be rhetoric, because it can be considered that. And then under rhetoric would be our ethos, our pathos, and our logos. Those are really our main terms. Later on we will learn other rhetorics such as like slippery slope and everything like that. I should go ahead and repin my video because I forgot to do that. Let's pin this. Meeting room pin. So then we can see that. There we go. So we have rhetoric, ethos, pathos, and logos. So this is basically what our argument web will look like, with claim being one of the most important things, as well as our thesis and our evidence. Super huge. They really form an argument. So based on these terms, I would like to just run through how you would structure an argument. So does anybody want to give me an example of what an argument could be about? Like, give me a starting claim. Yes, Evan.
That schools should have a mask mandate.
All right, so schools should have a mask mandate. That would kind of be our claim. One of our reasons for having a mask mandate is to keep students safe. That could be one thing, to keep our staff safe, to keep the numbers low in our community area. Um, so that could be our claim, our reason. So then our argument could basically be that, like you said, masks should be required in school in order to keep everyone safe, to keep the numbers low, in order to stop the spread of COVID. That could be our whole argument as well as our thesis statement. So our argument could kind of also be our thesis statement. It just depends entirely on what you're claiming and what your argument mainly is. So through that, we're gonna need some evidence. So, Evan, do you have any ideas of what we could use possibly for evidence?
We could use the AARP website and see if it has any statistics on how a mask has helped.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great example. So we could use the website that we just went over. Another good source would be like the CDC. They have a lot of valuable information that is also credible. We could also use some news sites and maybe even some research studies based on how masking has lowered numbers in our area by our school district or such. So credibility, which goes with our evidence, like I said, the CDC is a very trustworthy, recognized site, so that could totally be used for that. Relevance, okay, the pandemic's happening right now, these research studies are coming out right now. The news articles, the AARP website that Evan pointed out, it just came out this month, so that's super relevant, super current, which would be great for that. So what could be a counterclaim? Does anybody have any ideas of what a counterclaim could be? Yes, Evan.
That masks shouldn't be required.
Okay, yeah, they shouldn't be required, but why shouldn't they be required?
Um, Maybe someone brings up like some form of medical reason that they shouldn't wear it.
Yeah, absolutely. People have medical issues. Maybe this population of students has a lot of asthma or anxiety that can cause breathing troubles, or it could weaken people's lungs. That's a great point. So that could be one of our counterclaims. And maybe a way for us to rebuttal that is with the CDC article saying that it doesn't restrict the airway, or they make masks that are more breathable, or you only require students without this kind of accommodation. So that's another way that we can go through it. And with for using our rhetoric to support our argument, logos, our logic would be the fact that the CDC said 22% of schools that don't use mask mandates are seeing higher numbers or something like that, or the fact that we said that masks don't restrict the airway, it only restricts maybe like 2% and that's not harmful, or it's giving enough oxygen to the body. Our appeal to pathos could potentially be that we know a fellow student or staff member who fell sick and had to go to the ICU, and we don't want that to happen again or to anyone else. And then ethos, it could technically apply in this sense, depending on how you do the mask mandate. So the ethos could be applied to, Dr. Fauci, who's partnered with the CDC. He's been on their team for a very long time. He's very experienced. He has all this knowledge. He's been with us through the pandemic, giving us information the entire time. So that can go towards his ethos, and especially his degree in education, which could totally back up his evidence that he provides. Yes, Evan.
Oh, sorry, that was a hand from Alia.
Oh, no, you're fine. All right, so that's how we form our argument. Any questions on that? Everybody good? Awesome. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over what you guys are going to be doing today in class. So if you go, let's go back here. So if you go back under your Google, under the posted new assignments, your drills worksheet, if you want to go ahead and open that up. Evan, I'm just going to open yours real quick just because I don't have a document myself. So this is your practice drills worksheet before you do the actual worksheet. Remember, your worksheet is the giant packet, and then you're only going to be doing the first 3 sections for tonight, and your whole packet is going to be due on Friday. This drills worksheet should be done by the end of class, and literally what this looks like will be what your worksheet will look like for homework. So for your first section, you're going to given statements, and you're going to try and go ahead and use one of our new vocab words that we just learned, and go ahead and put them on the line to what you think the answer is. So cats are better than dogs as pets. Cats are better than dogs as pets. You will go ahead and put one of those letters or the word down for which one you think is right. So after that, I have included some websites that should have most of the information. Some might be missing, which is a good test for you to practice your citations. So go ahead and you just click the link and go ahead on the line, write down your citation in MLA format. And then after that, down here, I want you guys to go ahead and start making up your ideas for your argument paper coming up. So I want you to write a claim, research purpose, reason and purpose, thesis statement, all of that. Just so you know, this doesn't have to be for your paper. It's just very helpful if you start it now, and then I can look over it and help you through it if that's what you prefer. So once again, that step is completely up to you. And remember, this assignment is based on completion. I will make comments on it and grade it and give you helpful tips, so then this will hopefully guide you through your worksheet and give you a better idea on how to get that done. So it's just those first 3 sections, which is going to be on your, what's this called, drills sheet. So let me go ahead and go back to our classroom. If you go back to our Google Classroom under MLA Style Guide, this will help you with all of your citations. I would definitely keep it. This will get you through all of high school and potentially into college, because usually citation guides for MLA and APA, they change every 4 or 5 years per se. So right now, when I went to college, I started on MLA 8, and I started on MLA 7. Now we're on MLA 9. So it does change, but this little document, it shows you everything, how to cite. It says if you have an article in a magazine, in a newspaper, if you have 1 or 3 authors, if you have a website or anything. And each one, if you click it, it'll just drag you straight to the page where it's at and show you how to go ahead and type in your citation. So I want you guys to go ahead and practice doing these by hand before I show you some helpful websites that can help you do MLA citations, because once you understand what the format should look like and then you type it into the engines to create it, then you know, okay, this is wrong because I did this in class, and this is right and this is wrong based on my MLA style guide. Excuse me. So I just want you guys to practice doing it by hand, and then I can also see if you were paying attention, if you have any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. So let me unpin this real quick. Let's pin my video. So yes, I want you guys to go ahead and spend the rest of your class time going ahead. Go ahead and finish working on that worksheet. Just so you guys remember, right here, parent-teacher sign-up sheet is right here. Go ahead and, if your parent knows the time, go ahead and write it up there. If they need to email me, they can absolutely send me an email. Picture day is coming up, I want to say on Wednesday, so keep that in mind. Make sure mom and dad know, and you guys fill out that paperwork. You guys can also always email me if you have any questions about the homework assignment. And do you guys have any questions before I let you guys work on the drill sheet? Nope? All right. Go ahead and get started on that.